Oh, good. Really good.
It's gonna be better this time.
Oh, yeah. It's not good the first time. Eat it for leftovers.
Strange new show. It's the season finale. There are lyrics this time. Strange new show, but just for the season finale. Thanks, Jason Moe. I watched 2 episodes yesterday.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Strange New Show. Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I feel like I already need to apologize for our content today, but I am so excited to talk about the season finale of Season 1 of Strange New Worlds. Hold on to your butts. Mike, I believe you have a leftover joke for us.
Hey! No, I'm not even going to do it, Keith, because I did the lyric thing. Listen, can I tell you how I spent my day yesterday, Keith? It's probably I'm a little sleepy this morning. Mm-hmm. But we're going to get our S together for y'all, because the season finale, a friend of the show, patron of the show, Jason Moe, said, hey, guys, you know, one of the top 5 episodes of...
Couple people did, by the way.
Of the Star Trek original series is called Balance of Terror. It's season 1, episode 14, for those keeping track. Mike, could you track yourself down one of the Blu-rays of the original series and watch it? Because it will inform this episode. So I did that, Keith, and then like a maniac, I made my coffee. I just watched them back to back. Wow, I have thoughts, but I also recorded it, Keith, and posted it on our Patreon, patreon.com/K&M. You can have a full 2-hour marathon with Mike. I mean, that's something.
I mean, usually it's about 2.5 minutes, but you get 2 full hours.
Yep. Now, I don't know if I'll be engaged or conscious the whole time, but at least it's recorded.
No, I mean, come on. Like, I posted on the YouTube our text conversation of your reaction to the original series episode, and I can't wait to find out how you think, what you think about this episode.
Let me just say, 1, I totally understand the Shatner craze now. Dude is hot. And before he became a parody of himself, he was like awesome. So awesome. Really awesome. In fact, I'm not sure all the episodes were that good, but everything about it, I absolutely loved. The costumes, the 60s of it, the horny newlyweds horning just for like scenes.
Which is weird because it is the least horny episode of the original series.
Oh my goodness, it's so much horn. Everybody's young and attractive. The 60s look good on people, I have to say. Just like in general, the 60s looked good on everybody. Mike was enjoying. This sounds pornier than I meant it to. I mean, I really liked the show too. It looked good.
I mean, Mike, you need to wake up, get a sandwich, and a cold shower.
And Keith, did you know in 2006, the original series, season 1, episode 14, Balance of Terror, was the first Star Trek original series episode to be digitally remastered with new special effects? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, now Mike has trivia'd you.
Wow. There it is. Well, we have a heck of a lot to talk about. And so I think we're definitely going to be talking a lot about the original series episode as we talk about Equality of Mercy. But before we do that, of course, we need to talk about last week's episode and give the viewer ratings for all those who wander. And you know what? People liked it. JD gave it an 88, Jason Moe gave it an 88, and Worf's Boot Shivs gave it an 89 for an average of 88.33. People enjoyed it, even though it was an Aliens ripoff, and you know what? So did I. So there you go. That guy.
Do I win?
Oh, you most definitely win. Hold on, let me officially. Yeah, you gave it a 91. I gave it an 81. So yeah. So you are the victor on all those who wander.
And to the victor go the, I guess, leftovers, since it was recycled in the first place. So spoils. Yeah. So literally the spoils.
But you get the spoiled. All right, but it's time to spoil ourselves with some information about Equality of Mercy, which aired on July 7th, 2022, exactly a year ago. Because today, we are recording this on July 7th, 2023. The top song, he's already got his button hit for his goofy voice, It is returning to number one, As It Was by Harry Styles. I turned down my thing now.
It's not the same as it was, but it is. Because we went back to this one as number one, so literally it is the same as it was.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Does it go down? It's not the same as it was. Didn't it stay on that note? You always go down from there.
It's not the same as it was. As it was. Second time, I think it goes.
Second time, okay, all right. So curious.
Musical nerds. I mean, that you're trying to figure out any semblance of pitch once I hit the modulator is funny.
I know. That's true. That's got to be quite the, because it's not just pitching you up like octaves. It's.
I think it's randomized in some way, so if I was to take it off, I'm not really even
that must
making
be
an
really
attempt.
hard.
No, I'm
yeah,
not. I'm
okay,
not.
Well.
Hard would imply any sort of effort.
Yes,
on my part, and you're not getting
we're
much
all
of that.
about effort and incompetence. The two dovetailing constantly. All right, our top movie was
Most
Thor
people would
Love.
hack one email address, right? That's how it worked. Not
hacked
two.
Two of our email addresses, sent out like 15 emails each. That's it.
Two
then,
addresses that weren't real because they all kicked back, which is the funny part.
I don't understand what's happening with that, but yeah. So
it's unsettling. If the attempt was to just unsettle me, mission accomplished.
I know, because and the fact that it was two, and it was two of our this show accounts. Very strange. All right. Anyway, and not our personal, not like our 15 others
hack
and our
us,
pseudonyms.
at least become a patron first.
Well, I mean, I think we might be patroning them.
Yeah,
we
that's
just
a good
don't
point.
know it.
Yeah. Well,
all right. So our top movie was Thor: Love and Thunder.
I liked Thor: Love and Thunder. A lot of people had some feelings about it. I thought it really went into its needle drop 80s of it all, which, you know what? Take it back. Not a great movie. But it was a fun 2 hours.
It was fun. The tone. You either like that tone or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like, what was the one before that? The Hulk one with, or the fighting, whatever that was. Everyone liked that tone, and then they went extra into the silliness of it all.
Hey, speaking of, Guardians 3 dropped on the VOD today. Mikey's going to watch it tonight. They're saying it's the best Marvel of the summer, so I'm going to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. The weekly world news headline from 20 years previous.
I
like
on.
this one.
Stall, because Mike
we know.
forgot
Well, here, I'm going to say,
the thing.
I have a feeling I can tell Mike's future.
Oh?
Someday, hopefully many years in the future.
I keep Mom's ashes in the vacuum cleaner. Oh, Mom. Yeah, probably true. Bible prophecies, satanic terror the government doesn't want you to see.
No. Some government wants you to see some satanic terror, but not this satanic
Photo
terror.
of Yasser Arafat's love nest. You won't believe what's inside. Burglar
Wow.
poses as store mannequin to hide from cops. It's funny. Keith, can I tell you something funny?
Yeah.
A quick, just a tangential aside, if you will.
Isn't that everything that our show is?
So my vacuum cleaner, one of my cats either is pooping outside of the litter box, or I think more likely is just got some dingles happening in the back, and they drop off.
Scraping the dingles. Yeah.
So, I like to, every couple days, we like to vacuum the litter up from the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a rogue poo shot up the vacuum. No harm, no foul, right? But because the vacuum is hot, it sort of melted the poo on its way up.
Oh, no.
And now, whenever we fire the vacuum up, there is the tingiest just notes of butthole.
Just like an ode to butthole.
Yeah, just
Great.
So it's the house is nice and clean and vacuumed now, but a little butt.
Just that stale butthole just lurking in the air.
Yeah.
No wonder you guys have so many candles.
Mm-hmm.
So we gotta focus. This is a phenomenal episode. All right, so this was directed by Chris Fisher, who directed this and the premiere of season 2, which I'm excited about, coming up next week. I can't believe it already.
We don't have to wait. We don't even have to wait.
There's no waiting. It was written by Henry Alonzo Myers and Akiva Goldsmith, who are both showrunners on the show. So the big dogs came in here to finish off season 1. You know who else are the big dogs in my heart and mind
Yeah.
and our life? And that is our patrons. Mike, do us a favor. Tell us what they're getting and tell us who they are.
Keith, well, I mentioned it earlier. They got to watch me watch all kinds of crap this week. And every week, everything we do is also posted on random podcast feeds, Keith. But if you want them all consolidated into one spot, there's a Patreon RSS that was suggested by one of our patrons, and now it exists. Hey, you know the show you're watching now? They suggested that too. So they wield unlimited power, and you can join that team. There's all kinds of other good stuff, too. I won't belabor the point right now, but we really could appreciate you and appreciate the help you could provide by producing the show. Patreon.com/K&M. And Keith, those friends of the show are, in no particular order, more specifically the one listed here.
Yeah, the order of how much money they give us.
Go for it. You go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Nailing it.
We just ping-ponged. Well, I told you to do it, and you're like, nope. It's Bryant Kimball, Beer Sock, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious Worf's Big Ol' Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Richard Coleman, CRM Productions, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon, Steve Brown, and welcome, YouTube viewer, to the family. You have hopped on board, and we are grateful to have you here. JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell at CRM, Pat, and Joshua Cronin, YouTube viewer. I hope you get the Easter egg I put in there for you. Hopefully it is supporting what you're after.
You can join the team at patreon.com/K&M.
Yes, indeed. Which means it's time for everybody's trivial segment. The bumpers are going wrong. Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia.
Keith, it's just a challenge. It's a challenge that is being put in our way, and we, like any good Starfleet crew, are going to have to overcome the challenges and podcast a good episode about a good episode.
Yeah, despite being a terrible episode of us.
Yeah. We're piggybacking on a previous bad episode of us to give a good episode.
It's really, we're doing a remix.
Yeah, it's a meta.
Yeah, exactly. We went back in time and we're like, you can't release this episode. No. The world will literally end. Biggest
difference is we're going to find out, Keith, that the one of us that's supposed to live is Jen.
Oh, 100%. Of all of the three of us, which one is going to make the world a better place and which one just fills it with endless nonsense?
Oh, yeah. Which one talked about vacuum cleaner poop minutes ago?
On a Star Trek show.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So, trivial trivia. When the Romulan is revealed and we look at Spock's face, we, of course, hear a bit of Fred Steiner's original score from that episode. Fantastic score. We get our first sort of like Romulan theme. Each of the species have themes. Like the Klingon has a theme and the Romulans have a theme, and it's really, really cool. The sort of musical leitmotifs that Star Trek does. It's important. I mean, it's what John Williams does with all of his work. Every character has a theme, and sometimes they're emotional musical themes. I go on forever, but I'm not going to. So, timelines update. Based on various math from this episode, the unaired pilot, The Cage, the episode that features Pike as the captain, takes place 6 years before Strange New Worlds begins. Because it's interesting, because Pike has been on the Enterprise for a while at this point. I mean, at least 6 years, possibly more than that. It's fascinating that this is part of canon. That all of this is canon in the original series line. Interestingly and annoyingly, Paul Schneider, who wrote Balance of Terror, the original series episode, is not credited anywhere in this episode, despite several moments where they lift literal sections of dialogue and from the screenplay. I'm sure that's some sort of a financial decision or whatever, but yeah, I feel like he should be at least credited somewhere in this episode.
Do they reference the episode anywhere? Like, is it in the? Do they reference is the director credited, or who directed that original Balance of Terror episode?
Okay, hold on. Let me go look it up.
Because this one they're wearing on their sleeve, right? I mean, this one is clearly a GoBot of the. It has,
no question. No, it's specifically and intentionally. Let me Hold on. You should always do your own looking up, since I'm the one who talks the most.
I would have, but you were really
You told me to, man.
excited
You
about
told
it.
I'm following your orders. It was directed by Vincent Macavidi.
Oh, okay.
Vincent Macavidi. So
I don't see his name
I don't know.
anywhere either.
No, I don't either. There's also another interesting uncredited person in this episode, but that I think was intentional. So, it's on IMDb. Interesting, but not on whatever. So, in the main timeline, Kirk's first assignment was on the USS Farragut, but he never commanded it. So in our alternate timeline, that's what's happening.
Oh, cool.
So Paul Wesley in this episode becomes the 6th actor to play James T. Kirk. Can you guess who the other 5 are?
No.
You're gonna get 2 of them.
Yeah, well, Kirk and of
course,
Shatner.
Shatner and Chris Pine, but also Joy Deaver and Jimmy Bennett as the child and baby version of him in Star Trek, and Sandra Smith during a body swap episode on the original series.
Cool.
Our guest stars this week, although on Memory Alpha, I guess he's a special guest star. Don't mention, Paul Wesley as Captain James T. Kirk.
I guess that's the shadow drop, right?
Yeah, although I might just not have taken the screenshot right. So, I could totally be wrong. But we also have Melanie Scrofano as Captain Battelle, Dan Jeanette back as George Samuel Kirk, and you have Matthew Bourassa as the Romulan sub-commander, Andre Day Kim as Kyle, Rong Fu as Jenna Mitchell, Ali Hassan as Commander Hanson Al-Sala, Matthew McFadzean as the Romulan commander, and we have Ian Rayburn as the groom, Chris Rivers as Mott Al-Sala, Megan Sandhu as the bride.
Was he what's that movie that we love? Quest, Galaxy
Star
Quest.
Quest?
Was he Galaxy Quest guy? The Romulan commander?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
What was
look
his
it up.
name again?
The Romulan, the
main
Romulan.
Yeah.
I think it was Matthew Bourassa. Oh no, that's the sub commander. The commander is Matthew McFadzean.
Okay.
Right.
Continue.
Anyway, all right. And Carolyn Scott as the Praetor.
Not who I thought.
Nope. Okay, we're having a great episode, guys. Just in case you're wondering, this is just truly our best work. What do you say we hop into the screening room and start talking about this episode?
Man, what
happened to our bumpers, buddy?
I won't give it away, but I am. All right, let's just roll.
Okay.
Usually I do a check, Keith, but it didn't happen as much today.
No, the checks did not clear today. We begin zooming over an asteroid.
Keith, you know what else I didn't do is open the slideshow. We were dealing with the thing, with the hack thing.
Yes. Somebody. There it is. Oh, it looks so good.
Boy.
Okay. Boy. So we begin zooming over an asteroid being mined for resources. We're in the neutral zone, or near the neutral zone, between the Romulans and the Federation. And we are reminded that 100 years ago, there was a war between the Federation and the Romulans, and we haven't had any contact since. The outpost is defensive and designed to keep an eye on the Rommies. See what I did there? Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever used that.
But 2 things I found really fascinating. One, I think the monologue Spock gives on Balance of Terror, summarizing this whole conflict and the establishment of the neutral zone, is an incredible monologue, incredibly well delivered. B, it gave such Cold War vibes.
Big time.
Being written in the 60s.
Well, 60s was very much in the Cold War.
Yeah, I guess you always just think 80s Cold War. Like I associate.
Cold War was well raging in the 60s.
Yeah, but
in fact, remember like the Cuban Missile Crisis and.
Yes, yes. Also, last just to kind of point, We often, and I have started to do it in post, Keith, that's what we're, but have that rumble, the low ship rumble, the white noise. Interesting to me that in the original series, there is no low rumble white noise. It's all like submarine, pew, 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 like sonar beeps and blips and whistles. It's kind of established that way without
this is very much a
submarine,
a submarine battle going on, a Cold War submarine battle. I mean, it's like Hunt for Red October.
The original screenplay of that episode was not based on a submarine film, but Fathoms Below or something like that. But ultimately, the screenwriter of that episode that was uncredited in this episode did give credit to the submarine movie because he said, I had seen that movie and it did influence this episode. I just didn't put it together while I was writing it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it is crazy to think about this episode. I mean, always good sci-fi, right, is always commenting on what's happening now using sci-fi as a lens. And just how scared we were at that point in the middle of the Cold War. Always, it's always, when are we going to start the war? When do the bombs start falling? Duck and cover. The anxiety of that is such a big part of this episode. And to watch it now, where we're not in the Cold War anymore, but there's still plenty of stuff, because we're old enough, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching this are old enough to remember.
Director Vincent McEvely had seen the 1957 film The Enemy Below, but only noticed the similarities between its plot and the episode later. He admitted, obviously, it's the same story. And Keith, trivial trivia, the term photon torpedo was only invented in a later episode, but the same effect was used in this one, although they still called it a phaser.
Huh, interesting. Well, there you go. Hey, maybe Mike does original series trivial trivia. Right in the fly.
Now, Mike, waste your time by reading Wikipedia.
There you go. I mean, welcome to the show, folks. So, anyway, the Enterprise and Pike's girlfriend ship are there to help with the retrofit of the asteroid. Pike is making leftover pasta for his girlfriend, Captain Battelle. They discuss the rumors of what the Romulans are up to and her liking his beard. She says, gotta run. But before she does, she says, I'm always curious of what the Chris of tomorrow is going to be. And that, kids, is what we call foreshadowing.
So good.
Pike cooking. It's good. Good technique. He knows what he's doing. So later, we meet the commander of the outpost, Commander Hassan Al-Saleh, who is complaining that they're still using iPhone 4s out here. But never to fear, they're going to upgrade everything, including a bunch of automated mining ships. Now, of course, if you have seen Balance of Terror, you know this is a character from that episode, instantly recognizable. Then Al-Saleh's kid comes in. He's super excited and wants to join Starfleet. And this causes Pike to immediately short out. This kid is going to grow up to be one of the cadets he gets killed in his dark future.
Can you imagine if you get to meet Mickey Mantle, you hand him your baseball, and he drops it and walks away with PTSD.
He's like, ah! Runs away.
I'm like, oh, crap.
Wow. Yeah. Mickey Mantle, that's a... Well, your head's in the 60s. I get it. Oh, my God. I ran into White Shoes Johnson.
Babe Ruth put a cigar out on my forehead and ran away.
Oh my God!
I got I didn't get the autograph, but the burn is forever.
Yeah, Jim Thorpe slapped my mother. Okay. Let's move on.
Jim Thorpe slapped my mother is the best T-shirt no one understands ever made.
I mean, Babe Ruth put out a cigar on my forehead's pretty good too. So, number one chases him down. She already knows what's what. Good writing, right? You don't need a couplet where he has to explain what's going on. She already knows what's going on. Why, you don't need to waste the time having him recap. Because the characters are smart. Let him be smart. Pike goes back to his quarters to stare at pictures of children that he's going to get killed. I don't know if the beginning of that sentence or the end of the sentence is creepier, but both of them are true. He starts to dictate a letter warning him not to join Starfleet. When he is interrupted by a voice out of the dark, it's himself, older Pike, wearing an original series movie era uniform. Hell freaking yeah. I'm already 1,000,000% invested in this.
Especially since I saw Indy a couple days ago, and I would say that up-aging CGI / makeup, so much better than de-aging these days.
Well, and
it's much easier, of course, yes.
Well, for sure. And I think they did a good job here not overdoing it. Like we might have seen on Deep Space Nine, just this very week.
That was this week, yeah.
Yeah, so they gave him a little bit more gray and made him, added some shadows to his face, but he didn't really need to do a lot.
And he's bringing a gravitas, which I think is subtle but effective.
Yeah, it's like a little older, a little darker, a little wiser. It's good stuff. So in Act 1, older Pike ominously holds up a knife while he proves that he's really who he says he is. Meanwhile, Keith notices that Pike has a video wall in his quarters displaying a sparkling forest.
It was like fireflies.
It's very like tween decor. I expected Edward Cullen to arrive riding a unicorn. But we are not here to yuck Pike's yum. You make your video wall whatever you want, buddy. Old Pike says, you trying to save the cadets and yourself is gonna wreck the universe. This is where I point out that I don't like the updated plasticky sleeves on the red original series jacket. It makes it look cheaper and is sort of like unnecessary. Yeah, you can see right there. I don't know. I get you're trying to tie it to the sort of texture stuff that you're doing there, but I think it looks cheap. But other than that, it's an A+ representation of that classic iconic uniform. So old Pike hasn't arrived empty-handed. He's brought a time crystal from the Klingon monks. Yeah, at some point, Mike, you need to watch the introduction of Pike and Spock and his whole like time monk journey there.
So this is a pull also, the time monks.
Yes, because that is where he saw his dark future on Discovery.
Okay.
With these time crystals and the monks and blah 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 blah.
It's actually the first time he says "hit it." I know because I was trying to put together a "hit it" compilation.
Oh, good for you.
But ended up just finding a bunch of punch-its, which is the whole joke, actually. But he does, in fact, say "hit it."
Yeah, he sure does. He sure does. Get ready for our new segment. The Mike remembers it wrong and has to live with it for the rest of his life.
Yeah, but we do get "hit it" in there. Well, you'll hear it. It's fun.
Okay, all right. Yeah, well, good. So, anyway, he's going to show young Pike what happens if he avoids his accident. So Pike touches the crystal and jumps forward into the original series timeline and into the episode Balance of Terror. Snap.
Yeah.
And he drops in immediately in the middle of performing Kirk's speech at the wedding from that episode.
Awesome.
So cool. Instantly recognizable. You know exactly when and where you are. Because it's a thing we only see on the show once. So it's not like he's just on the bridge and has to figure out. We know, boom, we know exactly where we are.
So I this might be wrong, but when I was reading about Balance of Terror, there's a needle drop in that moment. There's like a song playing during the ceremony. For some reason, I either don't remember hearing it or it wasn't playing on the Blu-ray version. Like there was a rights thing, perhaps. And because they don't often license songs in the original series, but there was a song in the episode, apparently, according to the Wikipedia. And then there's one needle drop in this episode at the very, very end.
Right.
And I'm wondering if they're the same song, because that would be...
Was there a song playing in this? Oh, interesting.
In the final scene of this episode.
Oh, no, that I definitely, but in the original series.
Yeah, in fact, I have it still pulled up. Let me see if I can...
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't...
You keep... the Bounce Terror became all-core regular background song. Oh, the soundtrack cue in the chapel played during the opening scene of the wedding ceremony is an instrumental medley of 19th century English song Long, Long Ago by Thomas Hayne Bailey.
Huh.
So no, they're not. This is a pop tune that plays at the end. So it would have been good. They should have done that, but they didn't. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that would have been. It would have been a little bit weirder. Just like he's sitting on the bridge, like I've accepted my fate. Da, 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 da. What's up, guys?
That is the face. You just got his. He is doing that.
Yeah, what's up? Yeah. Hey, Spock. Hey, what's up, Uhura? All right, so anyway. He does a good job of being dumb because he doesn't know people's names, which is pretty funny. But he is rescued by a red alert.
Which also
Spock,
happened, in the original.
Yep, sure did. Spock, now first officer, announces that an unknown space vessel has attacked Outpost 4. Pike arrives on the bridge. Uhura is still there, as is Ortegas and Mitchell. Interesting because Pike is discovering what is similar and different from his timeline, and we're doing the same thing, what is similar and different versus the original series episode.
Right in this moment, because I have the context, I'm thinking, okay, is Ortegas going to be the bigoted? Because that's where the bigoted guy was sitting.
She is.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool, really interesting repeated beat. And you can see that the bridge is darker now. They painted some of the pieces black to match the original series. Again, really great small design elements which add a lot to it. But of course, it wouldn't be exactly the same as the original series because that one had Kirk there. So he hired different people and made different choices. So it's going to be...
in this universe, it's Pike continued to be captain. It wasn't like...
Yes.
In the other timeline, Pike dies, so Kirk establishes himself and he's building...
Kirk comes in and becomes captain. That's right. Really interesting. So, anyway, we did that. So Uhura says that 2 other outposts have already been blown up. Ortegas says it's probably the Romulans because I'm the bigot guy here now. And of course, we don't know what happened to Ortegas in these years that turned her from like happy jokey to this angry person.
So because I had learned in Balance of Terror... Sorry, this is going to be long, guys, because I need to keep the fill-in blanks for me. Because I had just watched it the first time, I learned in that episode that we had yet to make visual contact. We had never seen the Romulans
Never seen a Romulan before, that's right.
So on our show, in our timeline here, we still have not seen the Romulans.
Right, this is the first time we've ever seen the Romulans.
So when he goes back to his crew, they have not seen the Romulans.
They have not seen the Romulans, and it is interesting... I mean, I guess temporal prime directive or whatever, that he doesn't say, here's what the Romulans look like. We're going to know.
Don't be shocked, yeah.
Don't be shocked. Although, other than the connection with the Vulcans, that Spock at this point just sort of guesses at, as opposed to we know for sure, I'm not sure what tactical advantage it has to know what they look like. Oh, they've got little forehead thingies and they look kind of Vulcan. I don't know what the tactical advantage is there, but anyway, there it is.
Well, the one you can reason with that one captain. Like he can be spoken.
Right.
He can be diplomatically spoken to. So pursue that, Kirky. Maybe he tells him that in their little.
Well, but he's not. But that's in the future. That whole thing is being deleted.
Right, because when we see the episode, it's happening after this had already happened, but it didn't happen.
Right, so none of that actually happened. So, including his conversation with Kirk. Yeah, it's fascinating. Pike grabs Spock and tells him what's going on. Cool.
Another cool beat, like you said, they don't have to rehash the whole thing, Just get in my head and see for yourself.
Here, I trust you, here's the deal. Yes, he proves it with a mind meld. Certainly, again, as a writer, we don't need to do that beat. We've seen it in 1,000 movies. Just get to the point. That's a logical way that he would understand. It also allows Spock to see the accident from Pike's future. He gets it, and he explains that the accident happened 6 months ago. But Pike, in this timeline, saved himself and the cadets, which is an interesting timeline thing because I was under the impression that it was 10 years in the future that this was going to happen, but actually it's only 6 years from when he found out. Unclear on that. But anyway, they decide, also smartly, our goal here is to witness what you're going to screw up rather than change it. Because you're here temporarily. We know this is, like, whatever happens here is not going to count. strangely, which Spock sort of is like, okay, I get it. So like we just need to see what I would have done as opposed to try to change what's going to happen.
It's actually not the same, but similar to Bashir in our Deep Space Nine this week, where they're so readily willing to accept, oh, so we're going to wink out of existence the moment you leave? Cool, all right, well.
Yeah, they're like, whatever. Well, but they weren't real.
Yeah, this guy is real, though. He lives in a timeline somewhere.
Yeah, he's like, I'm about to go through something horrible, and it's not going to happen, and my entire timeline is going to wink out of existence?
His calm demeanor here is cool, but nothing compared to past Spock. That moment of just like understanding. Well, we'll get there.
Yeah. So it's, again, good writing is writing your characters to the top of their intelligence.
Yeah, competency porn.
It happens all through this episode. Everybody's working at the top of their intelligence, which is great. So they arrive at Outpost 4 and call for assistance from the USS Farragut, where La'an is now serving. And they get a call from Commander Al-Sala on the surface. And he acts out a scene that's almost exactly as it was on the original series. That somebody blew up the command post even a mile deep in a steel asteroid.
Yeah, the script is the same. It's 1-to-1.
It's 1-to-1, as is the shot and the fire. I mean, it's slightly updated, but very recognizable for what it is.
That's actually a pretty harrowing scene in the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the original series, like, having gone back and watched it, like, doesn't pull any punches. Like, it's pretty grim, which is cool. So, whoever it was, they couldn't see it, but they've got a super weapon. Then a Romulan warbird shows up and shoots the Enterprise with a big red, shoots the asteroid with a big red weapon. It blows up, and our buddy Al-Sala flies off into the world and blows up the entire asteroid. Does he get pulled back like that in the?
Yes.
He does.
He does, but it's almost funny because there's the big explosion and the
right.
But then like a couple of ticks of the beat go by before you see him kind of like, and it's less of a suck and more of him like running off screen. But it is something
hilarious.
Yeah.
I need to go back and watch that again. So we see the warbird cloak, and we've never seen cloaking technology before at this point either. But Spock, in both timelines, points out that they had to decloak to fire.
There's also a nod here, which I like, is that clearly we can do view screen better. We've done it, the big widescreen. But this is the exact POV of the original series. They use the two seats in the front to obscure the green screen or the blue screen in the back, and then just have the little viewfinder. So it's actually a 1-to-1 nod.
Yeah. No, I mean, that view screen, that iconic view screen, yeah, I mean, it's a much wider aspect ratio in the future. Everything's a wider aspect ratio in the future. But anyway, so the warbird disappears, but then the Farragut arrives, captained by, holy crap, James Tiberius Kirk. And there he is, looking all Kirky. We meet him, and he says, "Let's see if we can track the ship." And Spock has found a way to track the Romulans using micro-lensing of the stars. Very cool, right? And we sort of see this in like Predator, right? So it's transparent, but when you walk in front of a light, it's going to bend a little bit, and that's how they're tracking it against the stars. Very cool. They realize that the Romulans can't see either of their ships because when they're cloaked, they can't run sensors, so they're flying blind. Very interesting. And again, we see this technology later in the future where they definitely can, but they can't fire through a cloak, at least until a certain point.
So they see nothing out of their view screen?
They see nothing. So, I mean, they can probably look with their eyeballs, but you're not going to be able to see very much. Their sensors... I guess the idea is that their cloaking technology both uses too much energy, and I would assume it's, your sensors would be pinging out information that you'd be able to see you even without the cloak.
I guess
even with the cloak on.
Because I was trying to figure this out in my dumb brain, and I'm thinking, well, in the vacuum of space, right? you look out and you're like here on Earth, if you're lucky, you have like a mile point POV, or if you're on a mountain, you know, like you have you can see a couple of 100 miles. In space, you could probably see 1,000 miles straight out, right?
You could, but you'd have to have like a telescope to do it.
And you'd need to know where you're looking.
Which has too close of a focal point, because the distances they are from each other. You know, it's not like a mile. You could be 1,000 miles from each other and be right next to each other in concept of the speeds they're going, I think. So we assume that they're heading home for Romulus. Unusually salty, Ortegas wants to blow them up immediately. It's clear she's about to take the role of the super racist guy in the original series episode. Something clearly went down in the last 6 years to make Ortegas change in her character like this.
Loved that in the original series episode, because I thought it perfectly captured, and I thought his monologue perfectly captured. It's not just rampant bigotry and racism. It's a xenophobia rooted in war and in fear and in kind of, you know, there's an empathy, a restrained empathy you feel, because their family, many people died and went through it, and it's hard not as human beings not to attribute with a broad stroke the tributes of the specific enemies to the broader
and
audience thereof.
Lack of knowledge of them, lack of experience with them, and again, you know, this is where Star Trek was so good, and I really like that in Bounds of Terror, Kirk directly addresses it and directly knocks this guy back down, because at this point, that's how we were feeling towards the Russians. We were scared of the Russians. They were mysterious, scary people. They're going to blow us up at any moment.
This went from years.
But I remember. You know, again, this is before the wall came down, before the fall of Russia. When I remember living like in like elementary school, and the school brought in an actual Russian to come in and talk to us about his experience. I guess he had defected or something like that. And we were like, oh, what's he going to do? Is he going to be an alien? Whatever. And he's just like a dude saying like, yeah, this is what's going on. And they had an interpreter. But I remember it being very exotic and very sort of like, oh, a Russian. Woo.
I mean, I guess the good news is that we, as a political power, have solved this problem. We don't do that anymore. So that's
we're all fixed. Everything's great now. No more xenophobia. We solved it. Yeah, please. Anyway, where am I? So
I just keep derailing you. I'm so sorry.
We are never going to get this done. So Kirk says, in the meantime, we decide whether to blow them up or not. Let's shadow them. And they're going to think we're just a sensor bounce off or something. Pike asks Sam Kirk to come up and get info on his brother. Sam says Jim Kirk is a competitive wild card. And Pike is worried that Kirk is going to start a war because of how reckless he is. Now, Mike, if I sat you down and I'm like, I need some information on your brother. Mm-hmm. Tell me how your brother might destroy the universe. What would you say?
I'd say my brother is impulsive. He is prone to making rash financial decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in a crisis scenario, he's my first phone call.
Basically what he said about Kirk.
Almost exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So Uhura calls and says there's a signal bouncing off of a comet that shows a feed from the Romulans' bridge. And we're finally going to get to see what the Romulans look like. This is also a beat from the original series episode, which felt weird then and does now.
Also, I had made the deep sea analogy, submarine analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even recognize Spock is literally peering through a periscope.
Yeah, and he does all throughout the original series. Like, it's a very iconic thing that he does. So much sub stuff. So we see the first Romulan, and he looks like a Vulcan. Cue the Romulan music and the iconic Spock eyebrow.
Ugh, I laughed out loud.
I mean, because if you're going to follow up on Nimoy,
they do. The thing I laughed about in the Balance of Terror episode is that they spend, I think, about 35 seconds on this beat, and they go to each Prime cast member and do the zoom. But they only do one here, one super take, but they do the zoom in. They shoot it just the same way, and he does the face. It's
and he's got to do the Nimoy eyebrow.
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
mean, that's
a cool beat.
Super iconic.
But there's a huge missed opportunity here.
Oh, do tell.
The Romulan outfits should absolutely have a pop of purple somewhere because of those like sassy purple Romulan uniforms from the original series.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you know the trivia about the guy who played the commander on the original series, the Romulan commander?
He also played Spock's dad?
He did also play Spock's dad.
I kind of...
Holy crap, dude.
I told you I went deep yesterday. I was really into these episodes, so I started reading about them and all kinds of stuff.
You really did? I met him once at a convention.
Oh, that's cool.
Anyway, yeah, which at that point I thought, oh, he's like 1,000 years old, but he still had like next gen episodes to do.
Their outfits, the Romulan military uniforms in the OG, was so sass. I loved them, and I was hoping they would pop them here, but they didn't really.
And of course, it's sort of based on Roman, their ranks and their
names.
Outfits are, it's all Roman based, even though it's clearly an allegory for the Russians. Interesting. Anyway, so Kirk beams onto the Enterprise looking terribly skinny. Kirk's a little malnourished in this episode.
He's under a lot of stress. Well, I think they cast him to look like other Kirk.
No, he never. Well, at this point, he was underfed. So they have a meeting. Ortegas is salty at Spock and says, who says, look, this is a surprise to me too. Then Kirk posits that the Romulans intentionally sent the signal of their bridge to sow discord in the Federation, which, for me, I was really happy to hear.
Clears up a wormhole from the OG.
For me, that fixes a 50-year-old wormhole.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that always was like...
Getting to know that captain, actually tactically, even though he doesn't say it, that he did that, confirm it does tactically make sense, because they're playing this cat and mouse.
Absolutely. And so, like, that had bugged me since I first saw that episode. Like, you have a shot of their bridge? How the hell does that happen?
A long one. Like, a long, specific shot.
Yeah, just like, and like the camera...
And then he looks, and he, like, does a hero shot for, like, very long period of time.
It always bugs me when they do, which actually doesn't bug me as much anymore, but like when you had like a surveillance video or like the Zoom call and the camera would move.
Yeah.
And it would zoom in and that kind of stuff until your freaking Amazon Echo now does that. So
forget your Amazon Echo, like those pet cams. They have like, it's full 4K zooming.
It'll auto track and zoom, which... So that our technology caught up and closed that wormhole for me, because it always bugged me. But now it's like, oh yeah, no, that's totally doable, and of course it would auto track it.
You hear that, writers? So, sometimes you can just say future, and it'll happen.
And it did, and it did. So there you go. Even though it was clearly like a production contrivance. Anyway, so they're forced to make a choice: attack or let the Romulans go back to Romulan soil. Kirk, Spock, and Ortegas, Spock interestingly too, say attack.
Mm-hmm. Well, Spock had to, right? They had to one-to-one that.
Yes, no, for sure. But it's an interesting choice for both of them. If we let them get off scot-free, they'll think we're weak, and that might start a war. Mbenga and Pike think that fighting will start a war. And it's a really
But you have political
decision.
cover, though, because they are on the wrong side of the neutral zone. So you are authorized to... Isn't that the whole thing? Like,
yes, but it's the same thing, and we were dealing with the time because, it's funny how much this makes me remember my childhood talking about, before the wall fell, that I remember we took a school field trip to a military base where they had fighter jets there up in Vermont that would scramble and chase down MiGs and spy planes over our territory, right? They would, the Green Mountain Boys, what they were called. And so their decision, like, yes, technically you can shoot down this spy plane, but is that going to start is it worth shooting it down and risking them nuking us, even though we're technically in the right? do we really trust that they're going to respond to that, even though we're technically,
Well, that's something you actually, in social studies, I remember, it's so hard to grok as a young adult / not an adult, like an adolescent, is that a lot of things you learn about war or about political strategy, anything tactical really, is based on what your opponent would do if they are a rational, sound human being operating
Right.
with rational, sound motivations. And then you grow up and realize, oh no, there are
Kim
so
Jong-un
many
is
people
like,
who are not
just-
rational, who are not sound, and so
No.
everything everything tactically changes because you have to view it through the lens of your opponent, and that is
And it's based on our limited understanding of our opponent, and our opponent changes. Like 20 years ago, Putin may have been, crass and criminal and a dictator, but he wasn't crazy. But he's gone crazy.
well, and
He
not,
used to be rational.
and who are the opponents, right? Because in here, and I think we can make the argument that they get so zeroed in on the cat and mouse one-on-one, and we make all the right moves for this Romulan captain, but that's negating the fact that all it takes is one of his sub-commanders to be like, yeah, no, we're going to do it a different way. I'm going to I'm going to end around.
And thus why all of it is so delicate and so scary. I mean,
Are you telling me you can't just send out a tweet and it's just fixed, Keith?
Yeah, right. I mean, and look, we're picking on Russia because that's what the allegory is here. But our country might have gone a little crazy for a few years too, and so you don't know who's going to all of a sudden be like, wait, what? Who's in charge?
We're never off the hook, man. We're never off the hook.
No, truly. So, all right. Anyway, where the heck are we? Okay, so Spock thinks that the Romulans are an offshoot of the Vulcans before they came to logic. And if so, they're dangerous. And we talked about this last week, last week, that the Vulcans themselves had a very violent, and as he said, was imperialistic nature before. So before they came to logic, they were worse than we were, which is really quite saying something. So Kirk says the Romulans are going to go through a comet, and when they do, we can see them, and we can box them in with the two ships, and here's where we start diverging, because now we have two ships, not one ship, to battle, which is really interesting. And I'm like, how is this going to play out? They're going to neutralize, not destroy the ship. Pike is, again, afraid that Kirk is going to start a war by blowing up this ship.
And they're doing the writing is doing a good, leading us to believe that Kirk is the
problem, not the solution. Yeah. Yeah.
Is the MacGuffin, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, it's such a fascinating message that this episode is about. But I have thoughts about it. Anyway, naturally, Mike, it's a trap. Can you give us it's a trap?
It's a trap!
It's a trap!
Sorry, I don't do
Star Wars.
Yeah, but I don't know why you keep expecting me to do imitations. I just
because
don't.
Your impersonations are hilarious.
It's a trap! Oh, that
there
was
you
the
go.
wrong button, but it'll do.
It's something. And the Romulans attack, blowing the crap out of the Farragut.
I thought for sure, Mike. I just thought Kirk was going to die instantly. I was like,
Me
they kill
too.
Kirk, and then that's the thing. We need Kirk.
I didn't think he was going to die here, but I definitely thought he was going to die later. So the Enterprise fires back and is able to hit the Warbird, but then the Warbird shoots the superweapon at the Enterprise. It damages, but does not destroy them. And Spock says in both timelines that it has a limited range. They beam the Farragut crew aboard, including La'an, whose therapy has worked and is now a hugger in the future. That's good. That's very heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be okay.
Didn't take that long. She did the work.
6 years.
In therapy timelines, that's very short.
I've been in therapy for 25 years. I'm not a hugger.
I don't know. You ever hugged?
I hug all the time. So they talk to Una, or they talk about Una, number one, and we find out that she's in prison at this point. Just stick that in your pocket for later.
Well, I thought I had missed something because he's like the deception. I thought you knew, and I was like, oh, should I know that too? But
you do know that.
But I didn't know that's what they were talking about.
Yes. Pike and Kirk talk later, and Kirk is pissed. He says, "You flinched. You pulled your punch, and that's why we're going to lose."
Keith, I'm Pike. You're Kirk.
Yeah. 100 pounds ago. Kirk says that you're a wimp and you pulled your punch. That's why we're going to lose. And Pike says, guy whose ship got blown up says what?
It's a good pissing contest here.
It is. Spock calls. It's interesting because like they're definitely like measuring the cells and yapping at each other, but also reasonable at the same time.
It's awesome, actually. I think that dynamic is so delicately walked because the easy thing here is to have two big personalities, Pike versus Kirk, going, we don't agree. But most of the time they do, and they complement each other, and their strategies overlap, and they give and take, and there's cooperation. I think it's actually a really sound exploration of like heteronormative men working together without all the BS.
Actually collaborating. Yeah. And it is also interesting that there's clearly a pecking order, even though they are both the same rank. I think, I don't know, and somebody in the military might be able to explain this to me because I don't really know, but I think there's two things. One, seniority, which obviously Pike has seniority, and two, because he initiated the mission, he would be in charge of that mission, I would assume.
They're also on his ship currently.
Certainly when he's on his ship. Somebody would be able to explain that better than that, but I think there's something about that. Anyway, Spock calls and says he scanned the bird of prey. We damaged them, and they're limping home. Pike says, get him on the phone, and he leaves a message saying, let's be friends. I offer you a ceasefire. And the Romulans pick up. Which takes us to Act 3. Pike tries to make peace in the Cold War. We've been fighting since before either of us were born. They measure sabers for a bit, then agree on a 2-hour ceasefire to make repairs and bury their dead.
Every shot of this guy is awesome.
Yeah, that's a cool view screen. I don't think I clocked that shot. That's great. I have feelings about that guy, but we'll get there. Ortegas once again pushes to fight, and Pike gruffly tells her to stand down, which is a good beat for him there too, because he's like, I'm jokey, enough. Which I think is important.
Which we see Kirk does as well in the last
Kirk
episode.
does as well. Yeah. And Kirk sort of explicitly says, leave your bigotry off the bridge. But they don't let Ortegas be quite as directly bigoted as that other character was. But the point is still made. So on the Romulan ship, the first officer says, we need to fight. A ceasefire is weakness. And here's where I think his beard is weird and distracting. I have never seen a beard on a Romulan before, and even if he did, it wouldn't be like stubbly. It should be tight and clean. And so I have a problem with the beard.
Hold on. I couldn't wait because I was like, oh, I actually think his subterfuge is perfectly balanced. It makes sense. It's a great foil for this captain who's acting reasonable, and I'm like, I wonder what Keith had a problem with that. What did I miss? I'm waiting for your tactical complaint, and it's his beard's stubbly.
Yeah, his beard is stubbly. That's not Romulans. Romulans are tight and.
Oh man, that's my favorite bit.
There's no way. There's no way a Romulan ship would allow.
Best moment in the Punchies might be Keith being pissed about the beard. Actually,
stubbly bullshit. That is my wormhole. This whole episode.
You know what bothered me about him? If we're getting into it, you know what bugged me about him? He looked too much like the elf in charge during the Santa Claus movies, and I was distracted because I was like, "Oh, is that dude from the Santa Claus?" It's not, but I kept thinking that. What's his name?
There's something about
Bernard.
his beard, his makeup, whatever, does not feel Romulan to me. It's not. I wasn't a fan. And the actor's fine. I just mean like the design of the character. So the Romulan captain is clearly the cool progressive one. Yeah, it does kind of look like him.
No beard, though. That's what he would look like if he didn't do the beard,
Just
Keith.
throw a stupid beard on him. I should say both of us are bearded like idiots.
This is my favorite thing I've ever done.
Wow. Such a good episode. I hope you're enjoying this audio-only version of this. Anyway, so the Romulan captain is clearly the cool, progressive one that is open to peace in a culture that doesn't have much interest in it. Spock and Pike chat about their path to the dark future.
Oh, speaking of, Keith, before you... I'm sorry. This is my last... it's not my last interruption, but this is the super purple accent I was looking for.
Oh, sure.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
So good.
Little pop of the perp.
Yeah, we don't get any of it, but I guess there are some purple accents, but
there's a little bit, yeah, because they're a little bit straddling the Romulans we see starting next gen versus the sort of Roman-inspired Romulans, because next gen it's all gray and green, and so I don't think in the original series they hadn't really leaned into the green color for Romulans like they do for the whole rest of the run, and so this sort of finagles the two of them. So Spock and Pike talk about Una, and Spock explains that she got caught for being an Elorian and has been jailed. Kirk comes in, and I don't know why I find it so distracting, but he's what I had a friend describe as frequently happens with actors. He's a lollipop head. Meaning he's got a normal-sized head and a tiny little body, and it looks really weird from the side. Eat a sandwich, buddy.
He's busy, man.
I mean, how much are you getting Brian Darcy James vibes off of this guy?
Oh, now that you say it, he's a what they call a repla vegan. He only replicates vegan. I guess all food in the replicator is vegan, isn't it? Because there's no harm done to animals.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit murky, because sometimes, like, they're like, "What? You ate an animal?" And then, like, 2 episodes later, they're like, "I killed and ate this thing." So it's hard.
All right, so Kirk's a lollipop head. The other guy's got stubble. Keith is into looks today.
I'm very visually focused today for some reason. So Kirk says he wants to set up a backup plan. The Romulans could be calling for reinforcements during this ceasefire, and we should do the same. Smart. Kirk's made a lot of smart tactical decisions here.
Well, yes, okay, go ahead. You got it.
But the actual reinforcements are weeks away, because they are way out on the edge of space. But as Pike points out very smartly, the Romulans don't know that. So Kirk asks for a shuttle to do his secret plan, which we don't know about yet. Then Spock works to fix the phasers in the turboshaft, and we hear the voice of Scotty, who is not named or seen on screen, but we definitely learn that Scotty is working on the Enterprise.
Do we know, are there any Easter eggs? Like, was that a replicant of his voice, or was they just got a voice actor?
It's a voice actor.
Okay, that would have been cool if they
did a very good job. If they AI'd. Yeah, and I feel like James Doohan would have had enough, because he did so much voiceover on various things. Although that's not his accent, so he's Canadian. So
yeah, but
anyway,
you only need half an hour of someone's voice to do a pretty good approximation.
Yeah. Well, today, yeah, that would have been cool. I don't know, like, yeah, I mean,
yeah, you could have fed in all of his dialogue
if his estate were happy with it. Yeah,
that's probably where the mix-up
if his estate were cool with it, and they could pay the descendants, like, that seems like a good.
Or they could just do a buyout for somebody on Fiverr, which is probably what they did.
It's probably what they did. So 2 hours are up. Pike calls the Romulans and tries to make friends again. Humans have strength to make friends, not enemies. That's how we're strong. The Romulan captain says, "You know what? I feel the same way." Then a gazillion Romulan ships show up out of nowhere. A whole bunch of different designs, none of which we've seen before, which is interesting.
Turns out, Keith, he didn't have time to shave because he was busy making phone calls. Yeah. An interesting, like, it's fascinating what they have to do here with the ship designs, because it has to feel
old-timey, because the Romulan warbird that we have is clearly a only slightly modified version of what we have on the original series. I had a model of that hanging over my bed as a kid.
Cool.
But they also want to have some variation in the fleet, of which there's not a ton, but you can see there's a few different types there. But it also can't be the next gen ones, and it still has to feel a little bit old-timey. It's cool ship design that they did there. So in Act 4, we find out that the Romulan first officer not only disobeyed the regulations on facial hair, he called in the fleet. The captain is pissed. He just blew up their best chance at peace. Then the Romulan flagship Praetor calls Pike and says surrender and kneel. I thought she did a fantastic job in this episode. The Praetor. Then
Wait,
dozens.
Keith, time out. Because I mentioned it
Tell me
earlier.
what you're working on. Yeah.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me go back. I had mentioned the actor I had thought that guy looked like, and I think I nailed it. It's not this guy, but doesn't it look like this dude from Galaxy Quest?
Oh,
A little bit.
yes, it does. 100% does.
That's Enrico Colantoni. I couldn't pull his name earlier, so there we go.
Well, there you go. So
Thanks. Thanks for indulging me.
No, I was about to make fun of you for struggling with an Italian name.
Cantanoli?
I was like the most Italian person ever.
Colantoni.
I'm Colin Tony. I gotta bring in some Romulans and a pizza. Give me
Actually,
a pie.
that's what we call my uncle Tony. He's just eaten so much cured meats that they had to take his ass out and give him a colostomy bag. So we call him Colin Tony. Keith, can we steal that for a play somewhere? Oh, that's my Uncle Anthony. What do you call him? Colin Tony? He's got a bag.
I really hope this is a true story.
No, it's not.
What? You just out of nowhere?
I was doing a bit.
Oh, that was not good. That was not good.
Nothing has been good. This has been an hour and 10 minutes of absolute garbage for one of the best episodes.
I know.
Season finale, Keith.
They're propping us up. The show is propping us up. Thank God. So then dozens of Federation ships appear out of nowhere.
Awesome.
There are two fleets standing nose to nose. Apparently, Kirk brought in all the automated mining ships, which we heard about before. They laid the track, but they're merely a bluff. But the Romulans don't know what the ships look like. So smart, so cool, makes sense.
This is a cool shot too, Keith.
Yeah,
You
super
and me
cool.
too.
It's interesting because it is very two-dimensional, because it has to be in the screen where they're all oriented. But in space, you're working in 3 full dimensions. They could be coming from all over the different angles and stuff. But, it looks great on the poster. You got to do it that way. So the Praetor calls back. Pike says, these are Delta-class attack ships. And they spar a bit about who was the aggressor here with the Praetor. And they show a recording of the attack on Outpost 4. Says, we caught you guys red-handed. And the Praetor, of course, is not happy about the ship being caught. So she has the first Romulan ship fly forward. And the Praetor says, this is a culling. The Romulan captain calls and says, in a different reality, we could have been friends. Which was also the last line of the other timeline's captain.
It's the famous line, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, this sequence is awesome. Then the Romulans blow up their ship as punishment for their failure. Whew, ruthless.
I thought what I thought was going to happen here, this is a cool beat, but I thought they were going to send, because obviously we're waiting for like what's the big thing that's going to happen that makes the future so bad. I thought they were going to force his ship across the neutral zone to force the Enterprise's hand to blow them up, and then the big war starts. like the big
interesting.
Romulan human war, because
Yeah, well, but I think that that would have been an interesting tactic, but I think the bigger story is about like the Romulans. It's like a schoolyard bully. They see weakness, they will exploit it. They have no control over it. So there's then a battle, and Kirk puts the drones between the Enterprise and the Romulans. Pew pew, they start getting blown up. The Kirk then beams on board from his shuttle, and they warp out. And this is where I thought they were going to kill Kirk. Which, I get the value of them being able to talk at the end of this, but I feel like if we're going to do an alternate timeline, you know what? Actually, I take it back, because it changed when it became about Spock.
Yes.
I think if you killed Kirk here, it would be about Kirk.
Or there is then a question.
You put him on unequal footing, right?
We have a question. Which was the important part?
Which was the
lives,
important one. And if they didn't have Spock go through what he does, they definitely should have killed Kirk. But I think it's kind of stronger because it subverts your expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I thought where I expected it to go, and it there might be flavor of this, but I expected it to somehow, they could have killed Kirk, they could have done a lot of things, and I thought when we lit in a couple scenes when we have the final conversation between Pike and Kirk, I thought at some point it was going to be about the relationship of Spock and Kirk, because that ends up being such a pivotal relationship. And then we obviously in the lore we know Nimoy and Shatner had a thing, and I thought somewhere where you're going to establish that that's the important relationship. As much as Spock and Pike are friends here, the important relationship we need to save is Spock Kirk, and I think they kind of punt that a little bit and make it a focus more on Spock, which.
Well, I mean, because like their friendship, while great TV and great movie and make them fight for each other personally, don't have the like intergalactic stakes that Spock did.
Well, and I don't know a lot of I can't recall a lot of the movie plots and different things that they need to keep that in lore as well. So he does end up being, I think, a much more bigger force.
What we're paying off here is actually something that happens in Next Gen. And wouldn't be a bad bonus. There's a two-parter.
Okay.
That wouldn't be a bad bonus thing for the patrons, because it does eventually tie in to why we have Romulans on Deep Space Nine. Why are we sort of like uncomfortable allies with the Romulans in Deep Space Nine era? Well, something happened to make that happen.
Interesting. Hey, heck, we had one on board for an episode.
Yeah, we sure did.
Our cloaking specialist.
They lent us a cloaking device, which is this series is how we first invented the cloaking device. Anyway, so cool. They beam Kirk aboard, they warp out, and we hear the Romulans declaring war on the Federation. So, whoops.
You want to hear? This is not a wormhole, but this is Mike's only choice. I really hated was the two shots of Kirk in weird, scary POV cam. Like one of those
Pike
wearing one of those like harnesses that does this the steady cam. I hate that shot. I always do.
Yeah, I don't like it normally. I didn't hate it here. It was appropriate to the storytelling.
Yeah, but it's just so. It feels very what's the word, abrupt.
Yeah, it can be. It does draw focus.
Big change here. Instead of killing the boy.
Yeah.
Like they do in the Balance of Terror. They kill him at the end. They kill her here.
Yep. Pike is called to sickbay. He finds lots of dead people, including the bride from the wedding. And like you said, that is a play on what happened in the original series, which I thought was the most like brutal part of that episode, which is like, oh, God. Then we find a horribly mutilated Spock in the same way he was going to be. And Pike gets it. His face is even torn up like Pike's is going to be. He gets it. And he goes back to his quarters to find himself, older himself, waiting, holding a picture of the younger Pike shaking April's hand, wearing the uniforms from the cage. Great little continuity Easter eggs. So, in between this iconic one that this Pike is watching, and then the amazing red uniform is going to be garbage uniforms from the cage. So going to have some very bad fashion choices in between these two. But I love it as an Easter egg. Really, really cool. Old Pike then says, this was bad, right? It gets worse. The war is still going on in my timeline, and millions will die. I would imagine probably billions would die in that. And the best chance at peace with the Romulans in any timeline is Spock himself. And that, buddy, Spock is more important than you. And every time you try to change your fate, Spock dies. Which is, God, talk about a like a mind F. If your like future self came back and said, you know what, Mike, Jen is more important than you.
I'd be like, yeah.
I mean, I tell you that every day, but I mean, it's really quite something. Then Kirk arrives, and they both feel like they were supposed to meet each other. And Kirk says, and this is the message of the episode, sometimes you can't avoid a fight. And they have a chat. Then Pike touches the crystal and sends himself back to his timeline. His fate is sealed, as is the boy he was trying to save. He's like, he very much is accepts it and cool, but he's like a little bit like, oh, cool, I'm feeling better.
I know. I wish we had a small scene where he was like, he changed the letter and he's like, somebody set up a all expenses paid tour of that for that kid. We should help. We should make a wish that kid a little bit. Like, let him ride in the cockpit for a while. Like, do something. You ran away on the interview. Now you're just gonna let him die. I mean, like
I'm not. Like, I'm feeling fine. I'm not sick. Why is John Cena here? It's so weird. Anyway.
Delete.
So, Spock comes in unaware that any of this has happened. They talk for a bit, and Spock can sense immediately what happened, sort of. Really intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you remember, Vulcans are a tiny touch telepathic.
Mm-hmm.
So he has probably some pretty good instincts.
But it's like another scene which there's so much unsaid, and they have the confidence. Remember, there's a fluctuation of confidence here and there in the writing room, but here they know, they're like, we've written Spock really intelligent, we've written him with a high emotional EQ, at least this early on, and so we can let it be unsaid, and it's so much more powerful that way.
Oh yeah, he put so much together. Really cool. So they talk about it. They talk about their friendship. They almost make out. Then Pike goes back to the bridge as old-timey music plays, and he Pike nods to everyone and sits down.
Keith's Pike nod is actually pretty effective.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You pick up that phone. You hit that button, buddy. Huh? You hitting that button? Yeah, you are. Yeah. Then
it's not the same as it was. It was.
No Pike nod for you. So then they get a call, and his girlfriend beams in and with security and arrests number 1 for violations of anti-genetic manipulation. Here we go, cliffhanger.
And I think he kind of like breaks up with her.
I mean,
You're gonna arrest my friend. We have to break up. We have to see other people.
Yeah, I mean that would be tough. If Jen came and arrested me, would you break up with her?
Well, this is a good diversion, because in Balance of Terror they end the episode with pretty much Kirk banging the widow. She visits him and he's like clearly gonna bang her, and then in this episode it's pretty clear. Go back and watch it. It's pretty clear.
I mean, that's the subtext with every person Shatner comes across ever. So
I was like, there's a scene of them. They're embracing. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? She's single now. And it looks like
4 hours.
Looks like Pike's single again too.
Certainly seems possible. He's single, but this isn't over, yo. And that is how we conclude season 1 of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. I'm excited.
I need to stretch.
Yeah, time to stretch. Is there any chance there is some sort of a jingle that is completely wrong about
There may be,
joke
Keith.
is?
I may have just montaged a bunch of things that
gotta
are all
stretch.
wrong except for they hit me. Did you ever play Punch-Out on the NES back in the day?
Oh, the Mike Tyson
Mike Tyson's
Punch-Out? I didn't have it, but I think I played it at like a friend's house.
Well, this is the deepest cut then for you, Keith. You won't get half the Easter eggs because every time we talk about the Punchies, all I can think about is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So I wanted to incorporate that. I put together a little montage, and also you might remember a couple weeks ago I did maybe the world's worst Stallone.
Yes, and I did demand that it be part of the bumper.
Keith,
Yeah.
maybe this will work, maybe it won't. Let's see.
Oh, I can't wait.
Punch it! Punch it!
Punch it!
Punch it!
Punch it! Punch it, we can beat him.
Punch it! Punch it!
Let's punch it.
Punch it! Let's get the hell out of here!
Punch it! Punch it!
Punch it, Huxley!
Punch it! Punch it, Bishop!
Punch that shit!
Bye, Amber.
Just punch it, man! Just punch it!
Punch it, punch it, punch it!
Let's
Oh
punch
my
it.
god! Wow!
Yo, Adrian!
It's the Punchies!
Wow! And here it was. You were like, I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. You went full talent, buddy.
I did. I went for it.
That was really something.
So that's the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out theme. And if we get demonetized, I'm gonna have to change it. But I think it's probably okay.
Well, there's a lot of other nonsense happening
It's
at the
true.
same time. We'll find out. But yeah,
there
I've
you
never
go.
been so excited to do the Punchies here. All right. That's pretty cool. I look
man.
forward to watching that every week. All right, so let us talk wormholes in the plot, Mike.
You know, the experience I don't get is to have watched this without having seen Balance of Terror, because I wonder if there would have felt like there were more wormholes or things that seemed incongruent. I don't think so, but I'm just curious as to whether that
Yeah.
would be how that would rock. Anyway, aside from the facial, one thing about this episode that I'm gonna loud is how tight I think it is, and how well I think they went over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that they were connecting the things they thought would be connected, that they were making sure the lore that they wanted to establish was already established is not messed up. And I guess they had the safety zone of that all of that was going to disappear. They were going to erase that future, so it didn't really matter. To be frank, I don't have any wormholes that I clocked, so I'll pass on the baton.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think the plot is super tight. The logic of it makes sense. Really, really solid. Yeah, I think literally it's just stupid little nits to pick that don't even necessarily matter. But I think it was the look of the Romulans. There's something about the makeup or the lighting that they did that did not feel super. They looked a little too human. And I think the beard was a part of that. I think the makeup. I think they toned down the makeup, the actual like base, right? Because the Romulans have a little bit of a yellowish tinge to them on Next Gen, and I think we were missing that a little bit. It might have been there, but the light changed it, something like that. So it felt a little bit not full Romulan-y to me.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was they were trying not to change the color of people's faces, which I completely understand, especially if the Romulans were supposed to be stand-ins for something else. I totally get it, but I was just, there's a little bit there that it didn't feel quite right on the facial makeup for the Romulans. But other than that, that's just stupid. Like, who cares? It's a really tight episode. Let's talk about our best moment.
So there's, oh my god, so much good stuff. All of the nods to the previous episode are incredible, and I think it's just such a smart way to do it, and such a cool. If it affected me as much, having just watched them back to back, I can't imagine people who are super fans of the original or Trekkies hardcore. Like, I think it must just be such a fun, so much fun fan service, and also makes the episode better. But and all the Kirk stuff. I'm sure there were human beings who just lost their shit, good and bad. You know, people who thought it was, that's not my Kirk, or people who were just like, oh, Kirk said it. But But for me, I have to say it's the last scene with Kirk and with Pike and Spock,
Yeah.
because of what we had talked about just a few seconds ago. I won't belabor the point. There's so much unsaid, but both performances are so fueled and informed with all of that subtext that they know the audience knows, and so not all they have to do is just feel, and that could have been shot asynchronously. They might have shot that first, for all we know. There's there's just so much that goes into that type of performance and that type of direction, and it just all comes off, and there's an emotional weight with almost nothing said in that scene that feels important. I can't say it better than that. So for some reason, that stuck out to me as my best moment.
Yeah,
An incredible episode.
Yeah, I think that would probably be my choice too. But just for the hell of it, I think his scene with himself in the beginning.
Yeah, both.
You know, Pike and old Pike. That just like the little extra gravitas of the older Pike who has been through some stuff. I thought he just did a really good job of playing against himself, playing a slightly older version of himself. Though it's still Pike, but he's a little bit less jokey. He's whatever. I thought it was a really good scene. It was just well written. It was well done. Didn't waste a lot of time. Got right to the point. I think the story about his horse, or was it a donkey who died? It was a something
Horse.
It was a horse. That was funny. It was both funny and heartbreaking, and I thought was a really good way to do that. It was a nice little character piece. So that would be my best moment. So we have so much to talk about. It is time to hand out some self-sealing stem bolts.
You get some stem bolts.
Come on. Hell yeah.
They are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
All right, Mike.
Spoiler alert, I absolutely loved it. Loved this episode. You know, it's so fitting after last week where you had such strong feelings about the cribbing of taking other ideas from other properties and basically just using them. Not even using them to inform what was happening or to Easter egg, but just blatantly kind of using those beats.
Yeah.
Butted up against an episode in which I felt like they did not crib anything from the previous Balance of Terror episode. It wasn't even just paying an homage, saying, oh, for those of you who catch it, there's the eyebrow. For those of you who catch it, it's the wedding scene.
Right.
They used it as a base and then piggybacked on top of it to tell a new story and move the others and inform the other story. It's like a retcon that is both happening and not happening, as you sort of illustrated at the front. It's really an interesting take on the time, on the it's really a time travel episode, really. We're traveling into the future but not to change it, but to see what
Just
we
witness.
don't want to change. Right?
You're just going like, so how badly did I screw this up? Let me go watch it.
Which, when you think about it, actually is pretty interesting, because you know that the only actual agency, the only actual movement forward in this episode is Pike making a decision, is deleting an email. Really, that's it.
But it's more than that.
It is.
I mean, it's basically like choosing to let himself die.
Yes, I'm just saying, none of the actual bombastic events that we see happen have happened. It's all what could happen. It's all a hypothetical based on this small choice in the moment, which is both interesting because it could neuter the feeling of urgency in the episode, but also is a great exploration science fictionally of the ripple effect, right? Boop, butterfly effect. So I think it's really cool. I think all of the performances are really great across the board, but it's nice that since we've closed Hemmer's arc, we closed Mbenga's arc, we closed Uhura's arc, Whether we did those satisfyingly or not is up for debate. We've debated it, but here
Well,
we get
to some
we,
extent,
we get
yep.
we get Pike not being so wishy-washy anymore. Pike realizing that his fate is sealed. He's okay with it. Now he's going to whatever these next 6 years entail and or seasons of the show. He is who he is, and so we're released of a lot of baggage at the end of this season that allows for some open doors moving forward. I think as an episode, I just think the hoop the needle they thread was so well done. Everything was exciting. I just don't know. Jason, friend of the show, who I caught his email. I know a couple of you sent it, but that's who wrote us on the Patreon, and so I had watched the other
I
episode.
think JD did too.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, JD, by the way.
Yeah. I'll say that I don't know if I love it as much. A great portion of what I love about this episode is what they do with the old episode. And so it's interesting to me. I don't know if I would love it as much if I hadn't watched it. I think that was a really astute shout out for because I don't know. And I don't know. I don't know if we could talk as a writer, Keith, whether that's a good choice or not, because there's going to be a huge percentage of your viewership that has not seen that episode.
But I don't think it's going to be that huge, frankly, because this
your
show,
demo, yeah.
You know your demo. Like if you're watching Strange New Worlds, like you're a Trek fan, right? And it isn't pulling out some like random episode of Enterprise that not many people have seen. It's one of the most famous episodes of all of Trek.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
it's dealing
going
with
back
Captain Kirk, and whether you watch the episode or not, you know Captain Kirk, and so,
you know the basics of it.
Okay, fair. That's not really. It doesn't really matter. I did watch it, and I did love it, and so at the end of the day, I think it's getting it's my favorite episode of the season. I think it sends us off with my one nit to pick would be that I find the cliffhanger to be not that satisfying. We kind of knew this was coming. Well, we don't know if we knew it was coming. We knew what was going to happen. The way Kirk originally responded to it when she told him about the Elysian thing, Pike. Sorry, everything's confused now. He didn't seem to raise the alarms so much.
Well, he almost said like, "I welcome that fight."
Right. So I guess the stakes didn't feel as high as they are here, even though they said she's been in prison for 6 years. So apparently it is a bigger deal than I had expected. And also, in the pilot, isn't the first thing we do is go and rescue her from somewhere? So now I feel like that's a beat we got to do again.
Well, I mean, what it's clearly setting up, and I like, spoiler alert, I know that coming up soon, there's going to be a big extended courtroom drama, which I think this is how this is going to play out, which is basically like another take on Measure of a Man, which is one of the best Next Gen episodes about whether Data is human.
Let me phrase it a different way then.
Yeah.
One thing that has not really struck me, I think on the whole, we can talk about this maybe another time, I, on the whole, liked this season better than you, somewhat. You had bigger, I would say, episode to episode, you've had more nits to pick than I.
Well, here, I can do it mathematically.
Well, let me.
Your average up until this episode was a 79, and my average was a 77. So we're pretty close.
Okay. Well, I'll say one of the things that has not worked for me is that character. Number one, as a character and her relationships, and I'm not even putting on Rebecca Romijn anymore. It's just, on the whole, I feel kind of apathetic towards that character currently. And so that character having the big cliffhanger doesn't strike me as, I don't, and also the fact that I don't have to wait a year to see what happens.
That's right. Yeah, it's not quite Best of Both Worlds Part 1.
Yeah. So anyway, on the whole, that all said, so it's not like it's not 100 self-healing stem bolts, but I feel very strongly about it. What's the highest ranking I've given this season?
The highest you gave was a 95.
Oh, 95. Well, then I got
Spock Amok.
Well, that's good. 96.
96. Okay. Yeah. So, I have a whole bunch of various thoughts. I don't want to repeat anything that you just said because I agree with all of it. I think it's great. I think one of the major pieces of this is our new Kirk, right? Is the casting of our new Kirk. And Paul Wesley. here as the new Kirk, and I think there are parts of it that I think it does a great job. I think there is still room to find the Kirky Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have the Kirk smirk.
Do you think Kirk is going to be a character we need moving forward? Is that?
Oh, he'll be back. I'm sure he'll be back. And I don't know if he's going to be a major, like a regular character, but I'm sure he'll be back. So I think it was the picture of him that the picture of younger Kirk that Pike sees with his hair a little different, that felt much Kirkier to me than this sort of like he was confident and aggressive, but I guess maybe because you don't want to, because it's kind of Pike. I mean, it's like if you added a little bit of the Kirk smirk to this guy, it's pretty much Pike. But anyway, so like I'm curious to see how Paul Wesley's going to, what he's going to do with the character moving forward, and curious to see how that develops, and whether he goes in the Shatner direction or does something else. So I'm reserving judgment on his performance there. The other thing you said, because you mentioned, how many seasons we're going to have moving forward, and I think that might be why I think we retconned from 10 years to 6 in terms of before Pike dies, because this may not be in any way what they're thinking, but it did make me think, well, if it's 6 more years we get with Pike, that gets us to 7 seasons, which is what all of the Trek tries to get to. That's what Next Gen was, that's what Deep Space Nine was, that's what Voyager was, that's what Enterprise hoped to get to and didn't. So are we getting to a stopping point? If everything goes great, do we stop at the end of 7 seasons with what happens to Pike? Oh, that'd be a grim way to finish the show. But, I mean, it seems like this has established that it must happen. And we know that it's canon. So it does happen. It will happen.
Paramount has yet to show me that they can keep a show going for 7 seasons right now.
Yeah, commit to it. Well, yeah. But I know this one's doing well. So maybe. I don't know. But that would be awesome. And the other thought that I have about this is the message of the episode, right? Which is fascinating in its not Starfleetness, right? Because the message of the episode is you can't always avoid a fight. The message of the episode is sometimes you really do need to punch the bully in the nose. And you can't always talk your way out of something. You can't always Starfleet Federation your way out of a fight. And and I've given it some thought, and I think about it in my own life, right? I am a pacifist. I am a liberal. I have thrown 2 punches in my life. One of them was in a hockey fight, and 2, I was 10 years old fighting my best friend in a playground. And that's the last punch I've ever thrown. No, the hockey one was after that. But like, I'm not a fight person in any way, shape, or form. But I look back on my childhood. And it should not surprise anybody, but I was bullied pretty mercilessly. I had some pretty rough experiences. And my regrets, looking back, is that I didn't punch the guy in the nose, right? Because, I might have gotten beaten up worse than I did, but it probably wouldn't come back. And that there is value. I was too afraid of getting in trouble. I was too afraid of my parents being mad or whatever. And you know what? I should have just socked the guy. Mm-hmm. One of the many. But like there's like a moment in particular where I was like, I could totally take this guy right now, but I'm so afraid of getting in trouble. And if I had a moment, if I could beam back into my life, I'd be like, you know what? I'll get the detention. I'm gonna pop you in the nose. And I think that would have made my middle school experience much better than it was. And probably, it changed things for the better. But like the ideology of pacifism, the concept, which I profoundly believe in, right? But, by by not engaging, I showed the weakness which drew him and drew others to exploit that. And so I actually agree with the message here.
I don't think there's any right answer. There's no right answer
worse.
that's right all
No.
the time, right?
No, actually, that's a very good way of putting it. Like, we don't know what the right answer is there, but we do know that no one answer fits every situation.
I want to point out quickly that I find interesting is that, and I would agree with you, that is one of, if not the central focus of this episode. But what the central focus of Balance of Terror was that we got to stop fighting other people's fights. Sometimes something goes on, a war goes on for so long that we don't even know what the fight is anymore. This isn't our fight. This was their, and we don't even touch that. That is not part of this, because this is very much not dealing with that concept. Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, it's complicated, and it really, like, in some ways, this episode is Picard versus Kirk, because Picard was all about peace and negotiations and the diplomatic effort, and Kirk was the swashbuckly guy who was going to blow up the ship, and so that push pull, that question of which is the right way to go, and you don't always know. You know, like, either answer could be right or wrong in a lot of our situations, and you really just have to trust your gut. It's fascinating. I love that exploration. I think it's a fascinating episode from that standpoint. It's an incredibly well done, well directed episode. It looks phenomenal. Performances are great. Mike,
let me ask you a question, Keith.
Yeah,
captain question. Because I also felt interested. What I felt it was an interesting scene here too is when we have the first when Pike is talking to Sam about Kirk, and when Sam is describing his brother, is describing James T. Kirk, it almost sounds like he's describing Pike, because Pike is also pretty flip. Pike is also pretty
pretty confident,
and yet Pike is then questioning Kirk's suitability or his tactics, and so there's clearly a bit of a conscious or subconscious self-reflection to Pike. And my question to you is this showing, what do we know of prior to this series? What was like, what is the captaining style? What did we know? What was the established lore of Pike?
Not much.
Okay.
There's just that one episode. There's just the cage.
So is that maybe as far as writers are concerned, maybe identifying those similarities that they'd start to build out and having Pike be cognizant of them now allows them to have him change slightly?
Well, yes, and I think that's a big part of it. And we do know that Starfleet captains frequently have these characteristics. They're bold, they're brash, they're aggressive.
Like fighter pilots.
They're fighter pilots. Yeah, absolutely. And that is who wants to be the leader. Like, who wants to be the captain? Who wants to make those? It's like, nobody with a normal-sized ego even wants to be president.
Right.
Right. You have to be pretty confident in yourself to even desire the job. And I think it's the same way with being a captain here. But when you talk about change and why is Pike different than Kirk in this scenario, I think it's age and experience. And we talk about how young Kirk is in this timeline, and that Pike is much older. Kirk asks Pike if he's going to retire. Like, it's that I think perhaps Pike 10 years ago would have made that same decision. But, as the years go by, you get a little older, you get a little bit more careful, you lean on diplomacy more than the punch. And I think, and we see that bear out with Picard, who is much older and of course is much more reluctant to hit the pew-pews than Kirk was. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. And I think it's true of all of us.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the human condition. And so, anyway, loved the episode. This time I was able to sit down and just watch it as a fan the first time. And I was like, holy shit.
It's really good.
That was awesome. Really, really, really like this episode. By far the strongest season finale of any Star Trek, of the first season. That never has a Star Trek series finish their first season this strong. So for me, I'm giving it a full 97 self-sealing stem bolts.
All right.
I am so excited about this episode. I loved it. I loved it the second time I watched it. I look forward to a couple years going back and watching it all again.
High
I
marks
can't
for us.
wait for season 2.
Yeah, I guess my question for season 2, since I'm not as huge into the cliffhanger, Keith, is what changes for us? As we know, Keith never lets things stay the same as they was. Things always change.
It's time. I gotta refresh our look.
So I'm curious about that for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's gonna be too drastic, but we're gonna do one thing. I'm done with the green screen.
Yeah, data pads.
It's a pain in the butt. So we're gonna be beaming back into the real world because I just get lazier and lazier, because usually I had to like set up a whole thing, and now I literally have a screen I pull down behind me, but that's too much.
No, that's a whole reach, Keith.
It's a whole reach, and it bugs me every time I watch us. Every time I look up,
Yeah, your
my
glasses
eyes get keyed out through the glasses. So no more of that. We're done.
Well, I also, it's funny, we had an AMA, we're already too long anyway, but I love my Pike. I know we make fun of it quite a bit. My hair's not combed. I love my Pike, my salt and peps. I need a haircut. I'm getting one tomorrow. This is a crazy town. But
nobody gets more haircuts than you do.
It's next to impossible to key it. Gray hair cannot be keyed. It's
difficult.
It can't be keyed.
Well, hair in general is really tough.
So that's why in the beginning we keyed a lot, and so I wore a hat all the time. So now I guess maybe I'll have to Pike it a little more.
You can let the hair fly, but of course you don't even use a green screen. So if you use a green screen, it'd be better, but
You're
still
right,
not great. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Mike, if people were like, wow, that was 2 hours I want more of, how could they do it?
Look, there's all kinds of stuff, guys. We have other podcasts. They're all here on the channel currently. So just check us out. Give us a like, give us a subscribe if you even found this remotely entertaining. Or guess what? If you didn't, if you could just take a second, do it anyway. It helps us. The bots are all coming for everybody, so we're trying. But we do have other shows. If you're digging the Star Trek stuff, we look at toys on Sunday this week. Cool stuff. I think we're starting Picard in July. Christmas in July starts this week.
Picardmas in July.
Yeah, starts this week. So check that out on the channel. The Strange New Show you're watching, K&M Geekly. We chat on Mondays. We're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy and whatever else. Keith and Mike watch Deep Space Nine. We're wrapping up season 3. It's going awesome. Join that party. And if you'd like to watch me watch any of those shows or get any of our other fun content, patreon.com/KM. We appreciate you for appreciating us.
That's right. And if you're listening to the audio-only version of this in your podcast feeds, you can do us a huge favor and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting service of your choice. I can't believe it, but we will see you back here next week with the beginning of Season 2. Holy crap. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Strange New Worlds, a show we call Strange New Show. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.